Welcome to another episode of Behind the Strategy, a place for conversations, a place to find out and reveal all. What is behind your strategy? And in this episode, I am talking to Graham Coath, and we're talking about why I felt it was so important to relaunch the podcast based on having conversations.
Kate, nice to see you.
And you, Graham.
Look, we pondered over doing a podcast, or you revitalising a podcast and starting to tell your story again. And when we were doing that, when we were talking about it, we felt right at the heart of that should be your core values. So just talk to me a little bit about that for a minute. What are some of the things that are core values to you?
First of all, it's at the very core of me, the things that I hold dear about me that I want other people to believe, but also that I believe to be true, because you've got to have that as well. So honesty is crucial to me. Now, I don't mean that we don't tell the odd little white lie, or we haven't said, no, your bum doesn't look big in this. What I mean is, with relation to being a business, especially, you have to be honest. And that's the only way that I can get through each day, because you don't have to think beyond what is known fact and truth. Apart from the fact that it means that you are somebody from integrity. Let's just put it from my perspective. I find the world easier to navigate through honesty. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes an awful lot of sense. Do you think we see an increasing lack of honesty on things like social media these days?
Well, yes, because we have to paint a picture of perhaps what is not true, but what we want people to believe. And there's no way around that, because it's marketing. It has to be. But at the moment, it's all about, should perhaps always be, brand, our personal brand. Who are we? If we're working with ourselves, we don't have big companies, we're working for ourselves, we are our brand. We are who the person is going to know, like, and trust or not. So therefore, we will be painting these pictures of what we want them to believe for them to then come into our world and buy what we have to sell. So are we, where do you draw the line between, if I get up and have a really rubbish day, but I know I've got to do some recording, I've got to write something. Am I being honest by shaking it all off, stepping into it and stepping into how I feel on a good day and writing and preparing what I do? Or am I being dishonest by painting a picture of what I want people to believe regardless? It's very blurry. And I think sometimes people get lost in I want to say the word, the search for trying to find that ideal persona of who we can be online that is going to attract all the clients.
Yeah. I think one of the words that has clouded the issue for people over the last few years is authenticity.
Yes.
And I think the reason that authenticity has clouded the issue is because, as you say, in a search to being authentic, do we sometimes overshare stuff that actually highlights the fact that we're not very good at something? Which, when it's actually about being an authentic brand, there's still part of that brand that means, well, actually, if it's anything to do with the business, I've got to show that I'm professional. Yeah, if I was like a copywriter, for example, if I say, well, can't make any money out of copywriting, I'm struggling to get clients, I find it really hard to write, actually my spelling's awful, anyone looking at that might go, they're being authentic, they're sharing, but actually they're telling me they're a pretty awful copywriter at the same time. So there's an element by which yes, you need to share and be authentic, but it's where that line is in terms of what is it you share and when do you share that and with who? Is it not?
Yes, and what that actually does is it raises brings up the difference between vulnerability and authenticity.
Yeah.
So if we take the word as a linguistic, I can hear my professor telling me now, be pure to the word, start with that. Authentic means it's the real thing, it's bona fide. It has been validated as being genuine.
Yeah.
And we can do that with inanimate objects, can't we? How do we do that? How do we do that with ourselves, with a person, when we are meant to be evolving? Aren't we meant to be evolving and growing and learning as we go through life? By default, if nothing else. So therefore, we are perhaps not the same person I was. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even last year. In fact, I can tell you, I've changed since meeting you.
Thanks.
Well, it's true, because if we don't have an impact on people, if we're not prepared to embrace and learn and grow, I think that life would be quite boring. The vulnerability part comes in where I think that's down to what we share. And I think there's a lot of blurring of lines and a lot of misinformation spread about how vulnerable you need to be. Because you're quite right. If I see somebody who says, oh my goodness, today I've just spent the whole day finally managing to get this blooming PDF sorted out, and their business is helping people to set up online, I'm gobsmacked. I'm not going to want to work with them, because that's just tiny piece of information they should already know and have, and I would have expected them to do that. So they may believe that they're being honest and sharing their journey, and actually that might be good for somebody who thinks, oh my gosh, I was doing that today. How do you do it? How do you do that PDF? And they're perfect for them. But are they marketing to those people, or are they trying to market to somebody who's gone way beyond that?
So where do we start then? Or where's a good place to start then in terms of actually getting our brand over with some vulnerability, being as true to ourselves as possible, but at the same time, making sure that we look quite sexy as a proposition to the people out there that we want to sell to effectively?
Good question. And I think that we have to remember it is marketing. We are going to put on that little bit of a filter. We're not going to try and sell the car. If we want more money for it, we're going to make sure we've given it a valet, we've given it a clean, we've had it looked, and it looks scrubbed up, right? If you go around and try and buy a house and it's absolutely full to the brim with hoarders rubbish, you're going to want to negotiate on price, aren't you? So that, as a pure form, so to speak, is how we are going to present our best side, because we are going to give our best to our clients and customers. We are going to do that. I certainly am. I have no intention of going out there and pretending to be somebody I'm not, because I don't know how I'm going to keep that up when we're faced one-to-one or we're in a group. I don't know how. I'd be too worried they were going to call me out and say, oh, you know, worst fear, you look so different. You're so different from when you're online. Oh, am I? I think there can be a difference. Like, I make lots of skits and silly jokes or reels. I don't live my life like that. I'm not all day. Maybe I am sometimes talking to myself all day, but I'm not running those scenarios and sitting in my office all day just bobbing about thinking like that. There has to be what I'd call a given. It has to be a given. And if I'm having a bit of a rough day and I didn't sleep too well, doesn't mean I'm feeling rubbish and having a horrible day. It might mean I just look rough that day because perhaps I didn't sleep too well. Maybe the neighbours were keeping me up all night. I mean, who knows? So does it matter if I put a filter on? Does it matter if I put some makeup on? I mean, women are expected to look good anyway. And that's when you get into completely different territory, where if you don't wear makeup quite often as a woman, people will ask you, "Oh, are you feeling okay? Oh, you look really tired." Oh, thanks. Thanks a lot. Have you ever had that as a guy?
Yeah, no, it happens. I think guys would probably judge without necessarily saying. I mean, maybe women just are a bit more forthright about actually telling another woman, "God, you haven't done your hair today." Actually, a guy would probably just keep it silent, but actually look in disdain anyway about it.
But I do think it's about confidence as well, because does it matter what we do for ourselves to feel more confident? We are human, okay? Evolutionary psychology tells us that we are going to do things that is innate within us from thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. The first thing our brain needs to know: am I faced with a saber-toothed tiger? Is that person a saber-toothed tiger? Is this situation a saber-toothed tiger? Right? And it has to make that judgment. And it can't ever lose that element of us being who we are, because it's a life or death situation. It has to retain that. And that's where you get into different personality types and, things that happen through the years of the way the brains are formed, where people are more likely to take risks than others, because perhaps they don't have the same level of caring or worrying about certain types of saber-toothed tigers.
Well, now let's talk about risk. Because when we were talking about this, one of the things that we were saying was that one of the things that can make people realise we're less of a risk is actually when they hear our truth coming out, but not necessarily us talking it as rhetoric, but actually when they hear it in conversation. And that was one of the main reasons for focusing in on conversational content and, doing a podcast where effectively we can talk to people that we've walked with, right? Because that, to me, I think is almost the purest of truths that are out there at the moment. Because whereas you can generate a piece of content which is text-based or, even promotional video-based, or you take a nice selfie, or you take that wonderful photo of you next to the jet and say, "Look what I've achieved." All of that could be created.
Yes.
But what is very difficult to create, or more difficult to create, shall we say, is a genuine piece of content where one person is reacting, and you can see that or hear it, where one person is reacting to a question that somebody else has put out, and it's the response. It's almost like the response off the top of their head. It's what's on their tongue that moment. Because within that,
very interesting.
All the wisdom has to be there. You can't script it. You can't. You can, but it sounds scripted. But if you can hear that this is a genuine reaction to a genuine question asked within real time, suddenly you understand this person either knows their beans or they don't. And you can understand as well what it's like, in essence, to be in relationship with that person. And when I say in relationship, I don't mean, kissy,
Yes.
holding hands or whatever, but all business relationships are relationship-based. So you can understand what it's like to actually walk with that person and solve problems together.
Now, it's interesting you say that, because some people are very experienced at doing this, and they are actors. They are natural-born actors, and they are always ready to be able to paint themselves or say the right thing to put themselves into a better light. The fear of being seen as not good enough or less than or not enough, or is quite often the fear of that is enough to put somebody in the defensive position of being on hyper alert to better hear. They could be, I mean, one of the things about having ADHD is that I'm very sensitive and in tune to undertones, subtle undertones. I believe occasionally I make mistakes, obviously, but most of the time I can tell what's underneath it or behind it purely because I've spent most of my life on hyper alert. Those pauses, those subtle flickers of the eyes, the way that somebody will phrase a word, I can see where the cogwheels are and where they're thinking. Now, does this matter? No, not at all, because they could be, like you say, trying to form a really good answer. And there's nothing to stop them taking the opportunity from being honest, talking about an experience that they, wouldn't go out there and just make a reel about or talk about, but a proper, genuine experience. And there's two reasons for that, I think. One is, they either only mention experiences which they think are going to be business related because of the fear of that vulnerability. And then you've got to question the honesty. And the second one is when their people do, because I quite often won't talk about certain issues because it's not going to be giving enough information. I am going to be misunderstood, perhaps. And if I want to talk about something which is vulnerable, which is honest, which is me, which for people to get to know me, I want them to see the full picture so they can make their mind up properly. And I would rather they rejected me and thought, well, okay, nice woman and all that, but actually not for me to work with that. I would rather that than not knowing or being mediocre and like, not having an opinion.
So when we look at brand, then, and maintaining that personal brand across social media, effectively, we could pick holes in pretty much any mechanism of delivery of that. But
Absolutely.
Kind of what I'm getting from you as we discuss this, and this leads nicely into the kind of why produce what you're going to produce, is that part of the key is actually giving out that same story in different ways across different mechanisms, but being very consistent with that, so that actually that story, however you receive that story, whether it is the text post, whether it is a blog, whether it is video content, whether it is conversational content, the stories line up.
Yeah.
And that's got to be the important thing. The truths line up as well behind what you're saying. And a great example of that is, and I bet your bottom dollar most people that are watching this now don't do this, is how many people have actually looked at how many people have looked at somebody's content over a week and really studied it. I mean, really studied it. Not looked at each individual piece as it's popped up and just gone, oh, yeah, I love that. Oh, yeah, that's brilliant. Oh, but actually looked at that overall narrative as it plays out over a week. Because I tell you now, I have. And in doing that, you spot them. So this might blow some people's minds, right?
Yeah.
But actually, you'll spot them. The person that tells you on a Monday that their business has been really struggling, that they're struggling to make clients, they've found it a real struggle, that they've been suffering with their mental health, but there's light maybe at the end of the tunnel, and there's this, that, and the other, and then tells you on a Wednesday that they're absolutely cracking it at the moment. They've made £5 million in the last week, etc. They're lying.
Yeah.
Because those two extremes cannot sit in tandem with each other. Now, the reality is, for the majority of people, yes, we have peaks and troughs, but actually, those peaks and troughs are actually fairly slight in depth, right? We all have really bad days where everything, where someone in our family dies or we hear really bad news. We do have those, right? But as of today, if I had really bad news about my health, that wouldn't take away from where my business is today, right? It might have an impact on it long term, but it wouldn't take away from where it is today. So when you hear people putting out their truth and you see massive peaks and troughs when it's relating to their business, just think about it, folks, because that can't be true.
Yeah. No, it's actually very interesting you say that, because whilst you were saying that, Graham, I was thinking to myself, okay, well, do you know what? On some days, my brain at first, I was rejecting what you were saying, first of all, which I found rather interesting. And while you were speaking, I came to the conclusion that, no, you're right. I know I am, says Graham. I wouldn't have said it otherwise. Always. No, the reason is because my ADHD brain, I will have... So okay, let's just talk about it. It's Monday today, right? I don't know which day anybody's listening to this, but it happens to be Monday that we're recording this. And I just had a really weird weekend. I felt quite low, but not depressed. I felt really tired, but not ill. I just felt like the whole weekend, I lost my mojo. I love weekends quite often. I love having the time to go off and do bits and bobs and sit down. And I like to do those bits in the business which take me absolutely way too long, longer than I should even ever do. But I don't really care because it's my time and I'm doing it. And I had no motivation, none at all. Now, I know that is because I have a motivational based brain. And I had to, but it didn't impact. Now, if I'd have reported that this morning, I would have reported that. You're absolutely right. It would not have impacted what's actually happening in my business. As far as I'm not struggling in the business, it would have just been me as a person just having a bit of a struggle for the weekend, And I mean, it was absolutely fine. I just chilled out because that's what happens. And I just go with the flow and I potter about and sometimes feel that I have had a wasted weekend, haven't achieved anything. But maybe that's a topic for another day. Do we have to always achieve something? But today, woke up bouncy, still didn't get a lot of sleep. Woke up completely different. Now, part of that is ADHD as well. And also other people do the same thing. But I suddenly felt all inspired again because I heard something on the radio and it gave me a great idea. And it literally changed my mood on a flick of, in a moment. Just completely just went, an idea. And boom, I'm off and running again. Now, I'm not going to then suddenly make another post in the afternoon and say, actually, I had this brilliant idea. Everything's okay now. Because it's nothing to do with the business. I think it's about our journey. And I've been, our journey, what journey are we on within where I mentioned it at first about how we are evolving and growing as people and being honest with ourselves. Being honest with ourselves, I can't possibly not have a weekend where things just don't feel right. It's just not possible as a human being. Nothing drastic happened. Even if something had, that's something tangible. But I'm not going to report my mood every 5 minutes. And I think that's where you've hit the nail on the head, is this reporting of vulnerability doesn't mean we have to share the ins and outs of certain aspects of our business, and also the ins and outs of what's going on with us specifically. We don't have to, I don't know if I call it, maybe it is oversharing, but I think there's a blurry line between giving people context I hate, I have to say, I absolutely hate mentioning if something really bad has ever happened, because I really cannot cope with oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I don't want to have that, so I don't post stuff like that. But other people do. Other people need that, don't they?
I think it's about taking people on the journey of that vulnerability, that personal vulnerability, and taking it into lessons learned that then roll over into your business and help make you good at what you do with your business. Yeah.
Yes.
So if for example, I was to talk about my organisational skills in terms of the days of the week and diary entry and all of that sort of thing, I am awful at organising myself in terms of diary entries and whatever. So I have now become, through learning that my weakness in that particular area, I've now become a real expert at systems that help you with diarising your life, organising your life, etc., to the point where I can actually now help other people who are completely useless at organising their life to organise their life, right?
Yes.
So there's that, to me, is the right way to expand on these stories. I started off really bad at this here, and let me tell you, I was dreadful. I learnt because I went through this, and it was, trust me, it was bad. What I did to find out how to deal with this is I did my research here, I spoke to these people here, I now have solutions which I rely on and I put into place. Doesn't mean to say I'm bad at this stuff anymore, but I do have coping strategies which help me to make sure I'm great at this. I've now become so good at this that actually I can help you. And because I have an empathy towards anybody that struggles with this, it makes me a good person to help you with this, because I'm emphatic and I actually understand where you're coming from. Whereas someone that was naturally organised probably wouldn't be. And that yes, to me is a great way to tell your truths, but without it impacting on your business. Would you agree?
I do agree. And provided that you were not marketing yourself prior to that as being an excellent organiser, knowing all things organisational, then that would be good, because that's exactly what we were just saying a moment ago. It's about not putting across something in our business we should be doing anyway, because that's what we already do for others, to suddenly talk about how we can talk about how we've learned something new to enhance it, improve it. But who are we talking to at the end of the day? You know, if you've been working with me and you suddenly find out I didn't know how to do A, X, Y, and Z, and actually I was winging it, how would that make you feel? So we have that now. Maybe that's what's happened, and maybe me winging it is the best thing you ever had in your business. Who knows? But that's where we have to be mindful as to how others will perceive us. Now, people say out there, don't care, just do what you need to do. No, disagree. We have to be mindful about how others perceive us if we want those people to be part of our world in any way, shape or form. And we have to make sure that the way that they, that's an honesty, and that's where the honesty comes in, so that they may not perhaps like what we have done and think, oh my goodness, I don't agree with that. However, they still respect our honesty. They still like us. They still laugh at our jokes. But, there are things that we're not all going to agree on, like, which music we listen to, sport we like, business systems that we prefer to use. It's going to just fall into that type of category it doesn't matter. These are our differences.
So coming back really to finish on, it's, where you said earlier on that it's about really what you've learned along the way. and sometimes you actually need to be honest about the steps in your journey and the process by where you've come to where you are today. So actually for all of us, we may have started off really good at one thing over here. When we were young, we may have had ambitions in a completely different area. We might have had a completely different part of our career at one point. And that might have been something we were naturally good at. Yeah. But actually, along the way, we may have picked up other skills and integrated those skills together to become someone else that's useful, or have other skills which then are useful to other people. And what we've done is we've bonded those skills together. And as we've developed those multiple skills, then we have more to offer. But it's about, when we're telling those stories, not missing out the gaps, really, because otherwise you don't understand how I've got there. Yeah, and as you say,
exactly.
If we said to someone, "Oh, well, I'm good at radio." Okay, and how long have you been doing it? I've been doing it 3 minutes. I would normally question anybody that tells me they've been doing anything for 3 minutes and is brilliant at it.
Yeah.
Because I'd wonder how they got there. But if I tell you the whole story and along the way I say, I sucked at that for a bit.
Yeah.
But then this happened to me and I had training, or I had an epiphany, or I had something happen to me which made me change the way that I looked at this. I reinvented myself in a learning as I went along, and actually I discovered a great way of doing it which really works, and it took me time to get to perfect that and get that right. I can totally get that, and I can totally relate to it.
Yeah, I can too, and that's exactly linking back into the core values, because our core values, we start out with what we feel that we believe in, we live by, our own personal moral code. And as we grow and evolve, they will change. Now, honesty wasn't one of my core values when I was younger, not because I was dishonest, but because it didn't occur to me. That's all. I had others if I thought about it. So we will first of all take on the values and core values and beliefs of others who have influenced us and impacted us as we start our journey. And then we start to form our own opinions, and we start to interact and build relationships with others. We hear things, we test things, and we get responses and reactions from how we present ourselves. And that will help to reset what we believe. And that will then in turn how we want to be perceived based on what we now hold to be true and what we now have as our core values within us. So we have a different set of values as we grow and move forward. And that has to be part of it. It has to be, because where else can we stand morally within ourselves? I would much rather turn around and say, not I tried my best, because, you could try something, but it just doesn't sound very, it sounds a bit meh, doesn't it? But if you say, no, I did my best, that's definite, that's more positive, that's confident. We can let that go, because you can always try harder. But if you had already done your best, well, you've done your best. Maybe it's time to try do something else, learn something new, move on.
Move on, indeed. Now, we will be back with another one of these short episodes to talk about the voices, because the other important part of this conversational content that you're going to make are the people that are going to appear on it. And so we'll be back to talk to everyone out there, about how we choose those people. What are the values that we're looking for in the people that come on to talk? What are they going to talk about? What sort of conversation we're going to have with them? And, find out a little bit more about how we start putting that together. But come back, hear us talk about the who. very soon.
Yes.
I don't mean the group, by the way.
Oh yeah, although I did have a chat with Roger the other. I've got a picture of him, and the other day when I saw him. So the Who indeed.
The Who indeed.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Behind the Strategy. I hope you enjoy listening to the next one. Please subscribe so you get notified of when that's published. And if you'd like to find out more, please pop over to thestrategysuccesslab.com. And please do share this with anyone who you think might need this today.